Well, it is a real honor to have a member of our Brooklyn congressional delegation with us now. After serving in the New York State Assembly from 2007 to 2013, representing the 57th Assembly District, United States Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is now in his first term in the House. His district is the 8th, which covers parts of both Queens and Brooklyn, including most of Bedford-Stuyvesant, East New York, Canarsie, and Coney Island. Representative Jeffries, welcome to BK Live.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. So you represent the 8th District, but a lot of people tend to feel like their congressional reps are out of touch with their issues. What are you doing to kind of keep your finger on the pulse and know what's going on with people?
Well, it's generally a challenge for every member of Congress because it's a full-time job. People come from all over the United States of America, and their responsibility is to be in the Capitol to advocate for issues of importance to the people back at home, and to spend a significant amount of time in Washington, D.C. But that said, the job of a representative is to advocate on behalf of the interests of the people that you represent.
Right.
And so what we've endeavored to do is a few things just so that we can stay intimately connected to the people back home. First, we regularly hold telephone town hall meetings. We had one a few weeks ago. More than 2,000 people from all over the congressional district were on the line for an hour, taking or communicating questions and issues of concern to me, which I would respond to. It's become a very popular vehicle across the district for that close connection between myself and the individuals that I represent. I also do Congress on Your Corner events where we take our staff, our office, we locate on a street corner near you at some point in the congressional district, and we've done it all over the neighborhoods that I represent, and spend 2 hours, often on a Saturday morning, meeting with constituents who can simply just approach us with any issue, any question, any idea that they may have that we can then respond to and or follow up if necessary.
And I also happen to know, as a Bed-Stuy resident, that you are on Twitter at Rep. Jeffries. And I'm following you and getting the articles and stuff and finding out what's happening. It's like a day-to-day sort of, oh, I'm in Congress through my rep on Twitter.
Well, absolutely, and social media is an increasingly important vehicle. We do have an active Twitter account at Rep. Jeffries, as you indicated, where we try to provide updates as to what's happening on the floor, the House of Representatives, issues that I may be voting on, positions that I've taken, battles that I'm involved in on behalf of the people back home, as well as updating folks on the ground whenever I'm at home in the district. I sent out a tweet yesterday, I believe, letting folks know that over the weekend I had just read Cat in the Hat to some young people who are in the public housing development in Canarsie, future leaders in Brooklyn.
Well, bringing it right from the future to the now, and we hope a bright future for folks. You have such a varied district, and parts of the district were devastated by Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, and you have some legislation that you are putting forth to really help people with rebuilding their lives. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I first got to Congress, the first meaningful vote that I cast in January of 2013 was actually as part of the Superstorm Sandy relief package that was finally authorized at that point, even though there had been a battle leading up to it. And that will provide a significant amount of resources and relief to the people at home who are still struggling to recover. In many of the neighborhoods that I represent, as you point out, whether that's Canarsie, Seagate, Coney Island, Manhattan Beach, Howard Beach over on the other side of the border, but Howard Beach as well. All of these neighborhoods were hit incredibly hard. Now, what we've tried to do moving forward, and we've held multiple town hall meetings, 2 in Canarsie, 2 in Coney Island, in fact, over the last year, to try and get information to people at all levels of government as it relates to what should be occurring in terms of the relief process. What we've encountered most recently, unfortunately, is that while the city has a little under $650 million that has been authorized in terms of relief, less than 10 million of that has actually been spent. And so part of this may have been the transition from one mayor to the next. Bill de Blasio recently came out and said the city must do more. I wholeheartedly agree. We've got to help people get back up on their feet, and our office is actively involved in that endeavor on the ground, as well as legislatively down in D.C.
Right, a lot of people are wondering, where is the Sandy money? So that's to be seen, but let's talk a little bit about the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act. Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Well, no, thank you. One of the big challenges in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy was the fact that folks had their homes destroyed in substantial ways,
Right.
and were struggling to try and figure out how to rebuild. But given the realities of climate change and global warming and the increasing floodplain that exists even right here in Brooklyn, these very same folks who were just victimized by Superstorm Sandy were looking at substantial increases in their flood insurance premiums because of a law that had been passed in 2012 prior to the storm hitting. Many of us in the congressional delegation, Congressman Greg Meeks, Congressman Michael Grimm, Nydia Velasquez, Jerry Nadler, Yvette Clark, we all recognized that our constituents were facing a freight train heading directly at them that would have made their lives increasingly difficult. We all worked together along with people from other parts of the country. The senator from Louisiana was actively involved in the effort to press the pause button on these flood insurance premium increases that would have kicked in, requiring an affordability study so that FEMA actually has to study how can we create some solvency with our national flood insurance program, but do it in a way that does not hurt homeowners, particularly those who are impacted. And we were able to get that legislation passed. I was a co-sponsor of it, worked hard to get it done. It's on its way to the president's desk for signature. And so help is on the way for Brooklyn homeowners.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because a lot of people were holding their breath on that one, and now they can finally kind of exhale.
This was one of those moments where it seemed, especially for New Yorkers, that everything was aligned to get folks the help that they needed. We had people like you working in Congress. The governor was ready to let go of the funds and get things moving, and now Mayor de Blasio is urging the city and putting his weight behind it to get things done. But I want to ask you, you spent all those years in Albany representing us on the state level. We've had a few back and forths between the mayor and the governor on municipal IDs, raising the minimum wage, and charter schools.
Yes.
Yeah, so do you see, from your perspective, another sort of upstate, downstate thing happening?
Well, this is almost like Clash of the Titans, the New York State version. But traditionally, when you've looked at conflicts between the state government and the city government, we've seen instances where a mayor and a governor have had different views as to how our government should proceed. Right. You know, what happened the last time that there was a Democratic mayor and a Democratic Governor Mayor Dinkins and Governor Mario Cuomo didn't necessarily always see eye to eye, though at the end of the day, share a common set of values. And I think that is in fact the case with Governor Cuomo and with Mayor de Blasio as it relates to moving the city forward. They both have a robust, affordable housing agenda. I think they both believe in the strength of public education, though they may have some differing views in terms of the charter school aspect of that. But at the end of the day, there is a common set of values that both of them share. And I think that through this early transition, things will get worked out and that we can all find ourselves eventually on the same page to do the right thing for the people that we represent.
Okay. So now let's talk about how Brooklyn, now switching gears, has just become such a creative epicenter for everything from artisanal food to technology. And we know that you worked in law before you became an elected official. And what do you think about that growth and this explosion that's happening in this great borough of ours?
Well, it's been a creative explosion. And Brooklyn has always been home to a great deal of artists. And you can trace that back generations, but certainly in terms of what we've seen in the last 10 or 20 years.
Absolutely.
There's been a tremendous rebirth of that creativity and independent artists and filmmakers, songwriters, performers, things of that nature. The challenge, however, that we face, because that creativity is such an important part of our diversity, is to make sure that with the escalating housing prices, that we don't push people out in terms of their ability to afford to be able to continue to afford to live in our communities. Yeah. We've seen it as it relates to Fort Greene and Clinton Hill, increasingly in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Socioeconomic gentrification has been intense. Now, a lot of that was promoted in different ways by our previous mayor, and I'm hopeful that we've got a new direction in City Hall that recognizes that the strength of Brooklyn, the strength of New York City is tied to our diversity. Our racial, our socioeconomic, our cultural, our artistic, our linguistic diversity, across the whole spectrum. But if you don't deal with the affordable housing challenge, that we're at risk of becoming simply a place for the wealthy and for the well-off, and that will hurt us overall.
Indeed, indeed.
So you're a Brooklyn guy. You're born and raised here. We've seen you come up through the ranks from being a community guy to being our elected official.
Yeah.
How are people responding to you now? Because we see all these polls that come back and say, oh, they're not doing anything in Washington. But we know you from the block. So what's the feeling like in the neighborhood when you're doing your Congress on the corner or just walking around at home? Are people giving it to you?
Well, you know, they understand the dynamics down in Washington. I certainly like to think that I'm 100% Brooklyn, BK to the fullest,
Right.
as Biggie Smalls
Yes.
would say. But, you know, they recognize that part of the issue down in Washington, D.C., is that we've got some folks on the other side of the aisle, the Tea Party crowd in particular, that is not interested in governing. Right. And currently they're in control of the majority of the House of Representatives. And it creates a frustrating environment, but notwithstanding that, the flood insurance bill that was just passed by both houses of Congress is an example that we can overcome obstacles and get things moving in the right direction. We got the Violence Against Women's Act reauthorized last year over the objection of hard-right conservatives in the House of Representatives. The president in January of 2013 was able to get an increase on wealthy earners in terms of making our tax system more progressive. So even in the face of great frustration, there has been some progress, though there's still a lot of things that we've got to do. Comprehensive immigration reform is necessary. We have a broken immigration system. I represent one of the most diverse districts in the country: African Americans, Caribbean Americans, South Asians, Russian-speaking Jewish immigrants, Latinos, Chinese Americans. I mean, there's more than 24 different languages alone spoken in the 8th Congressional District. I'm working on moving beyond English and Brooklynese, but I'm working on it.
Brooklynese will get you far, though.
Brooklynese will get you far in all parts of the district. So there's frustration, but there's a recognition that we've got a situation in the House of Representatives that we've got to work to overcome. But notwithstanding that, we can't give up. We got to keep fighting. The people are behind us, and it's their faces that I see, their voices that I hear as I move forward.
Well, we are absolutely closing in on our last 40 seconds, so I just want to ask you really quickly. You've been a friend in this building before. We've had you here for shows, and you've always supported community media. Just on our launch day, give us a little capsule about what it means to you to have a place like BRIC and Brooklyn Independent Media that fills some of those holes in the media landscape that you don't see on corporate news every day.
Well, this is tremendous, and I think the sensitivity to the different neighborhoods that exist, to the importance of issue-specific coverage, which may not be provided in the different media outlets, and the explosiveness of Brooklyn as a national phenomenon and international phenomenon are important, but we've always understood its significance. I mean, this is really the 4th largest city in the United States of America. It deserves this type of coverage that I know you guys and others will provide, and that's just a tremendous thing.
Well, that's what we'll be doing. We keep it BK all day, to quote Biggie again. But thank you so much for joining us.
We
appreciate it.
appreciate it.